Alright, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Warrior Woman 91 and you're watching whatever the heck you're watching on my channel. You are watching today my discussion about the Chronicles of Narnia. Here, I got this book actually back in 2019. It's all 7 of the books, so it's an actual compilation of the Chronicles of Narnia. And I wanted to talk about it because most people think that this book is a children's book, or this, I should say, series of books is a children's book series. However, I 100% disagree with that, and I'm going to talk about that today in this video. Before we get started, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notifications, and comment below which of the Chronicles of Narnia was your favorite as a kid, and which of the Chronicles of Narnia, if you have read it since, is your favorite now as an adult. So, let's get started. Now, before I get started, I want to actually talk about the Chronicles of Narnia as a series and which of the books I like the best. For those of you who have never read the Chronicles of Narnia, I highly recommend it, and don't be put off by the idea that it's a children's series. It is not just a children's series, although it is a great series for children to read. I think that it has even more value having read it as an adult than I even got when I was a kid. I read it when I was, I think, 11 or 12 years old, and I loved it when I was 11 and 12 years old, and then I got it for my, let me think. I was 28 when I got it for Christmas, and I read it from the time I was 28 until now I'm 29, I'm almost 30. So it's been, a good almost 20 years since I had originally read it. So it made a big difference in reading it as an adult than as a kid. Obviously, C.S. Lewis was a very religious person, and he injected a lot of Christian themes and Christian ideology into his books, but not in such a way that people are necessarily turned off by it. Like, I think that even somebody who's secular can read the book, still get the Christian message, but not be turned off by it, or I shouldn't even say turned off by it, but not feel like they're being like on the nose preached at constantly, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So the first book is basically the story of the gospel story, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the idea of the sinner being sentenced to death, having to have somebody take his place as the sacrifice for the sin that he committed. Aslan, the lion, being the one who is the perfect one who didn't commit any sins, and he takes the place of the boy who committed the sins. And then he, of course, comes back to life and kills the witch who represents Satan and all that good stuff. So that is kind of the religious theme going on through the book, or the first book. I should say the first published book, because chronologically it's actually the second book, but details. Just read the series, guys. Anyway, so that was the first book I ever read, and it creeped me out. The first couple of chapters creeped me out as a kid, and so it took me a long time to actually come around to reading the series in the first place, which is why I didn't read it when I was younger than 11, 12. And then finally I got my hands on the first book, the first published book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, when I was 11, 12 years old, and I burned through it and I couldn't stop. And then I jumped into Prince Caspian, which is a little bit of a harder book to get started with, and it took me a long time, but I finished that book. Then I got into The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and now I'm just going to skip Prince Caspian because it is a good book, but it's also not my favorite. Voyage of the Dawn Treader is my favorite of all 7 of the Chronicles of Narnia. So good. It's a classic adventure story. It's there's dragons, and there's there's sea monsters, and at the end it's kind of bittersweet because ultimately there are characters that have to die and have to be sacrificed in order to bring an end to the curse that is on the 7 royal members of the Caspian's family, and he has to release them from the curse and whatnot. And so there are characters that have to either go away or basically die in order to undo that curse. So it's a dramatic book, and then again, kind of the religious themes within the book. One of the things that I like is you're introduced to a completely different human character that we've never seen before, who is actually a relative of the original 4 children, who are the most prominent in the first 2 books. And it's just the most classic part of the very first line of the book is, there once was a boy named Eustis Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. And I just thought that's such a good way to open the book because it sets it up. It sets it up because you learn more about a character in that one line than you do really in the rest of the book. You don't have to know anything more about this character than what was just said in that sentence. And I think it speaks to the genius and the ability of C.S. Lewis to be able to convey many, many different ideas, combine them all into a single idea, and then inject them into one simple sentence. It was perfect. Love it. That's my favorite book. And he is the character. Again, this is kind of, again, the Christian themes. In the first book that I talked about, the boy Edmund is the one who is the traitor and has to have Aslan sacrifice himself in order to take his place to pay for the traitor's sins. In this book, Eustis is the new character that's introduced. This character, he's the sinner, but he's not a traitor sinner. He's just completely conceited, wrapped up in his own self, doesn't care about anybody else but himself, puffed up ego beyond what's normal. This guy, this little boy has an ego the size of Donald Trump. He has to become a dragon. He is cursed to become a dragon, and has to have Aslan remove the dragon scales from his body in order for him to become basically a reformed human being again. And again, it's another one of those religious, or I should say Christian themes within the book of how you can't take your own sin off yourself. You have to have somebody else who's clean do it for you. And so I thought, again, great symbolism in the book. And also, I just love the story. I love the adventure of it. And I love kind of the bittersweet ending of it. That's definitely my favorite book of all of the books. But moving on, there's so many good books. You move on, you've got The Silver Chair, which has the second greatest character that C.S. Lewis ever wrote, which was Puddleglum. And he is just this kind of negative Nancy character, but he ends up being the most courageous of all the other characters, even though he, walks around, basically like Eeyore, everybody else is happy and saying, oh, this is good. And he says, well, this might be good, but you never know what might happen here. He's just that's one of my favorite characters. I think it's the second best character next to Aslan that C.S. Lewis ever wrote. And then you move on, you've got The Horse and His Boy, which is a story that's kind of out of character with the rest of the stories. It doesn't deal with any kind of chronological history of Narnia. It's about characters that lived in another country near Narnia and kind of what happens with them and how that relates. And it's another great adventure story of people having to escape from a land that's not their native land and having to get back to their homeland. And that's actually my siblings' favorite story. As kids, they used to actually play that they were the characters in that book. My brother would be the horse, and my sister would play the little boy that has to ride the horse along, and she would literally ride my brother on his back. And it's just, again, it's a great children's story, but also you've got these incredible Christian themes throughout the series. So, and then finally, The Last Battle, you have just a great representation of what the end times are depicted as in the Bible, of lies being portrayed as truth and people who otherwise wouldn't believe lies all of a sudden believing them and all that kind of thing. There's just some scenes in that book that are just crushing. And this kind of brings me back to my original title for this video and what I'm ultimately going to talk about. When I was a kid, the moment in The Last Battle that just got me upset, like I was on the verge of tears. I was 12 years old, and it's the part, spoilers for those of you who haven't read it. Gosh, you guys, this stuff has been out for 100 years, almost 80 years. Come on. If you don't know the story, don't watch this video. But there's a scene when they're at their wits' end and they're trying to fight, they're outnumbered, they're fighting, the forces of evil, and then over the hill comes the talking horses in droves, and they're coming, and then the dwarves who are supposed to be on the side of the good decide that they are on the side of nobody, and they kill all of the horses before they can even get to the other side to help the people on the good side. I was devastated by that, but it's amazing how true to life that scene is, and I didn't even think about it as a kid. It didn't even occur to me that such evil could exist, but throughout my adult life, I've actually experienced things like that happen. And it just even on a personal level, but also you see it in the political world as well. So it's just amazing how that one scene that I read as a kid is actually something that you could see happening in the rest of the world, so, and in real life. And then finally, the scene that didn't have nearly the impact on me when I was a kid that does now is when Tyrion, who has never met Aslan and never seen him, and he's just been, you know, faithfully following Aslan, but never has seen him in his life, finally gets to see him. And oh my gosh, that's like the most emotionally impactful moment of all the books. Even though The Last Battle is not necessarily my favorite of the books, that is the moment that it's like, all right, I can put it down now. So that's my little summary of what I liked about the series, both as a kid and as an adult. And I just wanted to say, C.S. Lewis even talks about this. You can read it at the end of this particular copy of the Chronicles of Narnia. There's a section that C.S. Lewis actually wrote talking about how it's important to write good quality books for kids, because first of all, kids are not worthless and they will become adults one day. And are you just going to serve them trash? Like, would you feed them trash? Like, no, and you shouldn't feed them trash into their heads either. But I want to get the exact quote, because he talks about how it's important not to use the term adult as if it is a term of approval. So basically, to call a book an adult book for some reason in modern society and even in his day was considered a form of approval or of saying, yes, this is an adult work of fiction, this is a serious work, this is something that is good and that is sophisticated and whatnot. And he actually views that as a term of derision, because it implies that something that is childish is something that is bad or immature. Whereas he views it on the other side. He says that an adult that is comfortable reading and enjoying childish things is actually somebody who has developed beyond their childhood and is not insecure in their own maturity. And I thought that was a really interesting take. And additionally, he also talks about the phenomenon of how as an adult, because he's had more life experience and more knowledge, he's actually able to put more into a children's book as a reader and as a writer. Whereas a child, you know, a children's book, they can only put so much life experience and so much knowledge into a book, and so they don't get out as much as an adult might. So it just goes back to my same point about how it's so important for adults to read, not only to write good children's books, because it really just devalues a child to say, oh, it's just a kid's thing, so it doesn't have to be very good, or it can be kind of dumb or stupid. It doesn't have to be that good. It can be dumb or stupid because it's just for kids, right? No, that's not true. That actually devalues the child to do that. And I appreciate the way that C.S. Lewis talks about children as if they are of equal value to adults, and that's just something you don't see nowadays. Like, people put value in their children, but they also, you know, think of them as, oh, they're a burden, or oh, you know, we can just abort this child if we don't want it. That there's a lack of responsibility that I see throughout, you know, my own generation and even previous generations when it comes to children. So I do appreciate C.S. Lewis's value of children, of children's books, and of just literature in general, and how he expects you to get something out of the work that he's written, as opposed to just, oh, this is just a piece of entertainment and it doesn't have to be that good because it's just for kids, or because it's just for me to, you know, indulge myself for a while. So I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed reading. I finally reread all 7 of these books over the course of 2020 and during unemployment time. So that was fun. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notifications when I go live or post a new video, and comment below which was your favorite of the Chronicles of Narnia. I'm really interested in hearing your guys' take, and I will talk to you guys on the next video.